You ever notice how quickly people judge someone without knowing the full story? One rumor, one mistake, one emotional moment, and suddenly everyone thinks they know who the villain is, but life isn't always that simple. Sometimes the person everyone calls the bad guy is the only one telling the truth, and sometimes silence looks like guilt until the truth finally comes out. Today's story isn't just about betrayal, it's about wisdom, about strength, about what happens when a person chooses peace instead of constant explanation. Because not every battle needs a defense, and not every accusation deserves your energy, but eventually, the truth has a strange way of revealing itself. There was a man named Daniel. At 47 years old, Daniel lived a quiet life. He wasn't flashy, didn't argue much, didn't try to impress people. He worked hard, stayed consistent, and helped people whenever he could. But one day, everything changed. A business project Daniel had been involved in suddenly collapsed. Money disappeared, friendships broke apart, and almost overnight people needed someone to blame, and Daniel became the perfect target. People whispered he knew what was happening. Others said he betrayed everybody. Some even claimed he planned the whole thing. The strange part, most of the people accusing him had no evidence, only emotions, only assumptions. But once a crowd decides someone is guilty, facts often stop mattering. And Daniel learned something painful that many adults eventually discover. People don't always want the truth. Sometimes they just want someone to blame. Here's something most people never talk about. Human beings are uncomfortable with uncertainty. When life becomes messy, confusing, or painful, the mind searches for a simple explanation, and often that explanation becomes, someone must be the bad guy. It's easier emotionally, easier psychologically, because blaming one person feels simpler than accepting complicated truths. And this happens everywhere. Families, friendships, workplaces, relationships, even entire communities. The quiet person becomes suspicious. The strong person becomes cold. The honest person becomes rude. And the one who refuses to fake emotions often gets misunderstood the most. Daniel understood this quickly, but instead of fighting everyone, he stayed silent. Not because he was weak, but because wisdom taught him something important. Arguing with people committed to misunderstanding you is exhausting. At first, Daniel wanted to defend himself. He wanted to explain everything, show evidence, clear his name. But then something unexpected happened. The louder others became, the calmer he became. And over time, he realized something most mature adults eventually learn. Not every accusation deserves a response, because some people don't ask questions to understand you. They ask questions to confirm the version of you they already created in their mind, and no amount of explanation changes that. So Daniel focused on something else instead, his character, his peace, his consistency. While others spread rumors, he kept showing up to work, kept treating people respectfully, kept living honestly. And slowly something interesting began happening. The people paying close attention noticed the difference between rumors and reality. Because truth leaves patterns, and lies do too. One evening, Daniel sat alone thinking about everything that happened, and he realized something powerful. Your image is what people think you are, but your character is who you are when nobody is watching. Image changes quickly. Character reveals itself slowly. That's why emotionally reactive people often destroy others too quickly. They judge moments instead of patterns. One argument becomes, that person is toxic. One mistake becomes, that person is evil. One rumor becomes, that must be true. But wisdom teaches patience. Wisdom watches behavior over time, and adults over 40 understand this better than most, because life eventually teaches you. Good people make mistakes. Charming people can be dangerous, and quiet people often carry the deepest integrity. Daniel understood that defending his image constantly would drain his soul, so instead, he protected his character. And there's a difference, a very important difference. Months passed, and slowly, The cracks in the story began appearing. One of Daniel's former business partners accidentally exposed hidden financial records. Another person admitted certain rumors had been exaggerated. Then more truth surfaced, and suddenly people began realizing something uncomfortable. Daniel wasn't the villain. In fact, he had warned people long before everything collapsed. But nobody listened. Because calm voices rarely compete well against loud emotions, and this is where the story becomes important for every mature adult watching this video. Sometimes people reject truth not because it's false, but because accepting it would force them to admit they judge someone unfairly, and pride hates accountability, so instead of apologizing, many people simply go quiet. And that's exactly what happened. The same people who attacked Daniel suddenly avoided eye contact. The same people who spread rumors suddenly disappeared. But Daniel didn't celebrate. He didn't seek revenge, because wisdom had already changed him. Most people think strength means winning arguments, humiliating enemies, or proving everyone wrong. But real strength is quieter than that. Real strength is emotional control. It's staying calm while being misunderstood. It's refusing to become bitter after betrayal. It's protecting your peace when chaos surrounds you. And honestly, that kind of strength usually only develops through pain. Daniel could have become angry, cold, cruel, but instead the experience made him wiser. He realized something powerful. People project their fears onto others. Dishonest people suspect dishonesty everywhere. Manipulative people assume everyone manipulates. And insecure people often attack confidence. That realization changed how he saw people forever, not with hatred, but with understanding. Because mature wisdom understands this, hurt people often hurt people, confused people create confusion, and fearful people search desperately for villains. One of the hardest lessons adulthood teaches is this: being good does not guarantee being understood. Sometimes you can help people, sacrifice for people, stay loyal, and still become the villain in someone else's story. Why? Because every person sees life through their own emotions, wounds, and experiences. And sometimes your boundaries offend people who benefited from your silence. Sometimes your honesty threatens people who survive through manipulation. And sometimes your peace irritates people addicted to drama. That doesn't mean you're evil. It means human psychology is complicated. Daniel finally understood that trying to control everyone's opinion was impossible. And honestly, that realization set him free. Because many adults waste years emotionally imprisoned by what others think, trying to explain themselves constantly, trying to fix every misunderstanding, trying to force people to see their heart. But peace begins when you realize not everybody deserves access to your explanation. Eventually, the full truth became public. The real people responsible were exposed, the missing money trail became clear, and Daniel's innocence became undeniable. But by then, something surprising had happened. Daniel no longer needed validation, because during the hardest season of his life, he discovered something more valuable than reputation. He discovered inner peace, and that's a level many people never reach. When you stop living for applause, you stop fearing criticism. When you know your intentions were clean, you stop panicking over false accusations. And when life matures you enough, you realize silence can sometimes be more powerful than defense. Not because you have nothing to say, but because your energy becomes too valuable to waste. Here's the lesson hidden inside this story. Before labeling someone the bad guy, slow down, because life is rarely one-sided. Every conflict has missing details, hidden pain, emotional bias, and untold truths. Wisdom listens carefully before judging quickly, and emotionally intelligent adults understand this deeply. Because by middle age, most people have experienced being misunderstood at least once, maybe in marriage, family, friendships, business, or personal failure. And those experiences teach humility, they teach empathy, they teach patience. Daniel's story reminds us that truth doesn't always arrive immediately. Sometimes it arrives slowly, quietly, patiently, but eventually, Character reveals itself. Always. So if people have misunderstood you before, if you've ever been judged unfairly, if others created a false version of you, remember this. You do not need to destroy yourself trying to correct every opinion. Protect your character, protect your peace, and let time expose what words cannot. Because eventually, truth speaks for itself. And often the people calling you the bad guy are simply reacting to a story they never fully understood. If this message connected with you, subscribe for more powerful stories about wisdom, human nature, emotional strength, and truth. And tell me in the comments, have you ever been misunderstood by people who never knew the full story? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.